Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. It's Manifesting Lab member webinar time once again. And this webinar, voted for by you, is on the subject of the timing of manifestations. And what you will learn today is, firstly, precisely how much time it will take for your stuff to manifest. You will also learn how to steadily and systematically shorten that time. And if that wasn't enough, you will also learn why you should never answer manifesting questions from dummies. So there you go. Let's take a look at the webinar map. And as many of you know, probably by now, we go around this webinar map in a specific direction. We go round like that. And within the groups of the slides, we go around like that. So you can figure out how much pain you have left to endure during this webinar by looking at the slides. And talking of pain, let's get started. I looked at the world and I thought, this world is far too happy. Far too many happy things going on around the world. People look far too pleased with the way things are, far too joyous. So I thought our first slide should be a celebration of that, or perhaps a counteracting of that. And it's all about the bad news and the worst, or the worst news, in relation to this webinar, because this webinar is about the timing of manifestations. So let's get on with the bad news, and then the even more bad news. And we'll start by thinking about dummies, or rather, manifesting for dummies. I want you to imagine someone completely new to manifesting, and they ask you a question. They ask you to tell them in a few brief sentences how to deliberately manifest their stuff. So this is a question for you. How would you simply explain deliberate manifesting to a newcomer? Somebody that knew nothing about it, in just a few sentences. And while you're thinking about that, I just want to check, is my sound clear to you? So I'm just getting a report that it might be a little bit off. Okay, I'm just going to make a few adjustments while you're thinking about the answer to that question. Okay, there's a few answers coming in there. And how's the sound, by the way? Any better? Okay, so I'm going to adjust my sound a bit, but while that's happening, I'm going to read out a few of these answers. So the first answer is, or the first answer to the newcomer, find the target emotion of the thing you want and learn to conjure that emotion in any way you can. Another answer, focus on what you want and feel positive about it. And if you can't feel positive about it, don't think about it. And think about or do something else that makes you feel good. Now, that's quite an interesting answer. You'll see why in a few seconds. Anyone else want to have a go? We have feel good about your life. And that will bring you more things to feel good about. So this is a tough question. Because effectively what I'm doing is I'm asking you to explain to a complete newcomer, someone who knows nothing at all about manifesting. And I have to say, what have you got exactly pretty much what I was thinking of? Which is manifesting for dummies. First of all, feel good and think about your stuff. If you can't feel good, don't think about your stuff. And then, if you're not feeling good, do something to feel good first, and then you can think about your stuff, if you want to. So that, in a nutshell, is really what we do in deliberate manifesting. However, you've answered that question to that person. But invariably, when you answer a question like that, the next thing they do is they ask you another question. And would you like to have a go at figuring out what the next question that they ask is? Okay, so somebody in this webinar is literally reading my mind today. It's getting boring now. You're reading my mind completely. But I shall read out the the other answers. So someone saying the next question should be how? Another person saying, what do I do if I can't feel good? And another one saying, okay, I just did that. So where's my $1 million and red car? And another one, how to feel good when my life is going badly. All valid questions. But bearing in mind the title of this webinar, the same person who got the last one right, or read my mind as to what I thought the answer should be, has got this one exactly right as well. Which is, they invariably ask me, okay, how long will it take to manifest? Which is kind of like what some of you have been hinting at anyway in your answers there. And that's hardly surprising that we're going to bring up that question in a webinar entitled The Timing of Manifestations. Now, when they ask a question like that, it's a little bit of a problem. And the reason it's a problem is because you're having to deal with the ultimate illusion. You see, the ultimate illusion of life is really what the subject of this webinar is about. We are talking about the timing of manifestations, and yet time itself is not a real thing. Time itself is an illusion. I spoke in a webinar entitled Dealing with Overwhelm about the library of time. And the idea of that, and you may wish to have a look at that webinar if you haven't seen it, but just to briefly recap, the idea was that time is not really some sort of linear thing that we think it is. What it actually is very similar to books in a library. When you go to a library, everything that the library has is already there on the shelves. Every word has already been written. There are no surprises, really, unless books are being added while you're standing there. You have the choice of everything there. All the authors have put all their knowledge and all their stories in the library itself. And this is an interesting analogy because it means that you can experience the library in any order you choose. All you do is you pick a certain book off the shelf. So you might pick a novel and read a story, or you might pick a book that has information and you read that. But it's entirely up to you how you engage with that library. Now, I'm calling this the library of time. And that's because the same principle applies to time. All time that exists already exists, just like all the library books. And your only choice is to which of those books of time you decide to engage with, in which order. Past, present, and future all exist right now, in this moment called the now moment, which is basically an eternal single moment. It can be a little bit of a difficult concept to get around. But the way it works is that your non-physical self, your broader self, can see all the books in the library at once, that library of time, but your physical self can only see one. And so as you live your life, you're choosing to pick a certain book off the shelf and live that element of time. And we experience that as linear time, but it isn't. Time itself is just a location in the library. So that then makes it pretty awkward to answer that previous question. How long to manifest what I want? Well, everything you want is already manifested. Time doesn't exist. So if you're being truthful and they ask you how long should that thing take to manifest, you have to say, well, actually, it's already manifested, but it's just that it's not about time at all. It's about vibration. And remember, this is a newcomer to manifesting, and that's probably going to sound like a pretty unsatisfactory answer. And not only that, it's going to be especially unsatisfactory for a webinar titled The Timing of Manifestations. Now, I'm just going to make another little adjustment to my sound, so please bear with me. How are you hearing me there at the moment? Okay. Does that sound any better? Okay. So apologies for the sound quality today. Obviously, this manifestation hasn't yet manifested properly in this webinar. I blame dummies who ask questions. Right then. So we've established that this library of time is a difficult concept to get across to a newcomer. So when they ask that question about how long is it going to take to manifest, you're not going to give them a good answer. And to make things even worse, time itself is not moving at a linear rate. At the moment, in our physical realities, what's happening is that we're getting this time compression effect. As you get more and more in tune with who you are, manifestations are coming more quickly. And we're being told by some channeled beings that time is speeding up. And many of us seem to have experienced that ourselves. But if time is speeding up, what that means is that we're going to reach a point where it's going so fast that we effectively have no gap between having a desire and having the manifestation of that desire. And this is not just theory. This is what these channeled beings are saying. You've got the ninth dimensional Pleiadians saying that. You've got Abraham saying that. They sneaked that sentence out in a recording once and never repeated it again, but they said it. We are coming to a point where we will have instant manifestations. So time itself is changing. And so when somebody asks you how long a manifestation will take, you've got this issue that time doesn't exist, and the time you've got is disappearing as well. Now, I said that the news was bad for this dummy who's asking the question, but the news gets even worse. They've asked how long their manifestation will take. We've explained there's no such thing as time, which isn't particularly impressive. But now, the other bit of bad news you have to tell them is, well, I'll explain it in a story. And some of you may have heard this story before, but pay close attention because I have a question at the end of it. Long ago, there lived a farmer at the edge of a small village. And one day, his best horse broke through the fence and ran away. The farmer's neighbors came to visit and gave him their condolences for his loss. Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. Then the next day, the horse came back, and with it followed 2 new wild horses. The neighbors, hearing the news, visited the farmer again. Wow, such good luck you have. That day, the farmer's son, while attempting to ride one of the wild horses, fell and broke his leg. Oh, how unfortunate, the neighbors said. Now the following day, a military brigade marched through the village on the way to war, drafting all the young men in the village for their army. And they noticed the farmer's son's broken leg and did not draft the wounded young man. So he ended up staying at home. Such good luck, said the neighbors. So the question I have for you is, which was the real manifestation and why? Anybody want to have a go at that one? So one of the answers here is that not being drafted was the real manifestation, and the others were just the route taken for that manifestation to happen. Any more people want to have a go? So I'm ignoring everyone who's got the right answer because there's a few of you. Not to say that that's a bad answer. That's actually arguably, and the point of reading that one out was that is what most people would say. They would say there's a whole set of vibrational matches on the way to a manifestation. And then the final thing was the manifestation. Now, someone saying source only knows. So here's the way that most people think the manifesting works. There is a manifestation that you're heading towards. And as you go along the way, you get a vibrational match, and then eventually your manifestation. And we tend to talk in these terms again and again and again, as though this didn't really matter, but this was the thing that mattered. But as many of you have already said, all of these were actually manifestations. The only difference between this manifestation and these things we're calling vibrational matches are simply your intent in giving meaning to it. That's all. In this story of the farmer, at any point, a person could have said, that's the manifestation. But there would always have been another thing coming next. So really, manifesting itself is a very judgmental thing. It's not really as cut and dried as we think it is. When you set out to manifest something, and you disregard everything on the way to it until you get the thing, that's really just an illusion. You've just convinced yourself that all those steps along the way were not the real manifestation, but the thing right at the end was. And so that is the point of the story. Manifesting itself is an illusion. There are no manifestations. They do not exist. So what we've basically said is that time is an illusion. We've said manifesting is an illusion. Because you're making it up as you go along. So that can only mean that really all of manifesting is simply a scam. What else could it be? So when that person who asked that simple question, when is my stuff going to come? How long is it going to take? You can't answer them. You cannot give them an honest answer. And if you thought that was bad, I have perhaps even worse news for you. Because your explanation of deliberate manifesting doesn't look good to that newcomer, and you might think it can't get any worse. But it can. And that's because of this. This is an analogy that came from a webinar called the Receptive Mode webinar. It's the analogy of a helicopter pilot and a soldier. Now, I'm not going to give you the full analogy here. I suggest you rewatch the Receptive Mode webinar. But the analogy is that the helicopter pilot represents your broader self, and the soldier on the ground represents your physical self, and together they coordinate a path. They guide themselves to manifestations. And the way that guidance operates is through emotion. Following the orders from your higher self, getting the broader view is what the helicopter pilot is telling you. You yourself are the physical self. So you are reliant on that helicopter pilot part of you to guide you to manifestations. And that guidance comes through emotion. As you feel better, you're getting closer to your manifestation. As you're feeling worse, you're going away from it. So the freedom you think you have, well, yes, it's freedom, but it's freedom to do what that broader self is telling you. So the question is, do you really have a choice? Because ultimately you're going to feel good, because everything you want in life is because you want to feel good. So it's just really a question of how much suffering you want before you decide to let go of the fight, follow the advice from that helicopter self, and go with the flow. Now, the reason this matters is because if you're being guided by that helicopter self, that higher, broader self, it would always guide you to the most direct path, wouldn't it? To get what you want? No, it doesn't. And that's because of this. And it's what I'm calling the Clarity-Desire Conundrum. This thing is basically a little dirty law of attraction secret that many people don't talk about, or perhaps don't even know about. But I've noticed it quite a bit, and it especially happens with people who want to help others, who want to uplift them, who want to maybe be of service to them. And so a lot of people interested in spiritual subjects experience this. It also happens to people who are not clear about what they want. So let me explain what this thing is. what happens is that helicopter self, that broader self, let's imagine it there, is in communication with you, guiding you through emotion. And let's say that it knows that your current reality is at a certain level. And it knows to get your manifestation, your current reality has to be at a different level. Your broader self cannot magically give you manifestations. What it can do is work in harmony with the law of attraction to help you manifest what you want. Now, sometimes it knows that to get from your current reality to your manifested reality, you need a bit of help. It knows that, for example, you're not clear enough about what you want. Or perhaps it knows that you don't have enough desire about what you want. Because remember, it's working off the law of attraction. It's the law of attraction that does the manifesting. So if you are not clear, in other words, your focus is not clear about what you want, your broader self has to find a way to give you more focus so that you interact with the law of attraction more appropriately. Or if it notices that your desire is not enough for what you want, it has to find some way to give you more desire so that you interact with the law of attraction in such a way that you reach that manifestational level. And the way that it does that is almost analogous to jumping on a trampoline. So if you imagine a trampoline, what the trampoline does is if you jump down onto it, it bounces you to a higher level. So you've got your helicopter self. It sees you need more desire to achieve what you want, or more clarity to achieve what you want. So it sends you down so that then you can spring further up. That is something that is rarely spoken about. Because what that means is that your life, for a short period of time, may appear to get worse. But if you go with that dip and you get out of it what your broader self wants you to get out of it, which is either more focus or more desire, you will then springboard to your manifestation. This bit where things get worse first is the bit that our physical selves don't want to know about. That's why I say it's kind of the dirty little secret of law of attraction. Because your broader self can only work in conjunction with law of attraction. If it cannot just magically bestow things on you. So if you do not have enough desire for something, but you want that thing, it will guide you to have more desire. Often in the form of kicking you out of a comfort zone you may be in. by giving you a crisis in your life. The same goes with focus. If you are not clear enough about what you want, you're kind of vague about the things you want, it can quite happily put you in situations that make you get more clear. And this especially affects those who want to help others. And the reason for that is you cannot help another person until you yourself have gone through it. And so a lot of people who get involved in spiritual subjects and want to help other people, they find themselves put in situations where life causes them to get really clear about that situation, about how to get out of that situation, about what to do in that situation. I have seen this happen so many times to people, and you have probably seen it happen to yourself. If you want to teach another person something and you're not clear about it, and you genuinely have a desire to help them, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to be jumping down for a while on that trampoline. Because that will then be the fastest way for you to get clear. Jump down, get clear, and in that clarity, you achieve the manifestation of being useful to other people. But it also works in relation to physical things you might want to manifest. Maybe you want a huge amount of abundance, but you're not allowing much abundance in your life. So then, what may happen is that you get put in a situation where you have even less abundance, which now makes you want abundance even more. Your desire for abundance is huge. And from that huge desire for abundance, the law of attraction responds in a huge way. Now we have a question here, somebody asking, why do very spiritual people renounce desires and not experience contrast? Well, if you think about what renouncing a desire does, it basically means that you don't have to experience this pain. Because what those people have probably noticed is if they want something, then they have some pain first. And they think that by not having the desire at all, they can miss out this pain bit. And that is accurate. Yes, they can. But having no pain is not the same as having what you want. So you can experience this life where you cut yourself off from all your desires and even try and cut yourself off from all the emotions that go with them. But that's not a satisfying life. That might be a life with no bumpy rides, but it's not what you came for. You came to this physical reality for the journey, for that experience of getting involved in these manifestations, of jumping on that trampoline downwards and then upwards. You knew it was going to happen. This trampoline jump is the clarifying step, the step where desire is launched. You'll often hear Abraham refer to this as step one. It's this judgment about step one, this pain, which doesn't have to last very long, that people don't want to know about. They want their manifestations directly. But that defies law of attraction. You need to have clarity before you can get what you want. You need to have desire before you can get what you want. So there's always going to be a little bit of a trampoline jump. And so the question that then comes up is, how do I know when my inner being, my broader self, is guiding me to a trampoline jump? And when is it that I am resistant? And the answer to that is you don't really know. Because you don't have the helicopter view. You are the soldier on the ground. And so if you don't really know, but you know that if you went with the flow of it, you would eventually get what you want, then you might as well give yourself some life rules to live by. You might as well enjoy the ride. Because you have no choice but to be on the ride. So you might as well enjoy it. You have no choice but to eventually get what you want if you follow your inner guidance, your broader self, even if it dips you down onto that trampoline. So you might as well assume that everything that happens to you is for your benefit, even if you can't see the benefit right now. And like we said earlier, it's your choice as to when a manifestation has happened. So you might as well choose to see an enjoyable one. So that gives us a very unsatisfying set of answers to that person that we were talking to earlier. If you think back, the reason we're talking about this now is because we had somebody, a newcomer, who asked us, how long to manifest what I want? And the only answers we've given are, well, I can't answer how long because there is no time and time is changing. I can't answer to manifest because there's no such thing as a manifestation. It's an illusion. And I can't even answer that I'm doing the right things to get my manifestation because my inner being, my broader self, may guide me to something else in order to get clarity or a stronger desire. So perhaps there's no direct route or route to the manifestation. So basically the answer to that question is almost unanswerable. And so we might as well stop this webinar now. Now, obviously, I'm still here. I was just adjusting the sound a bit. We have not stopped the webinar. And that's because it's not all bad news. There is a little ray of hope. It's true that we cannot, for any of our manifestations, establish exactly how long it's going to take because of all those uncertainties. But there is something that we have not considered with this. And that's that manifestations have a controllable element to them despite all those uncertainties. And that element that's controllable is a big element. Imagine your manifestation, the thing that you want, is like a joint of meat. And like this joint that's on the screen here, there's quite a bit of fat to it. Now, most people, they want to trim that off so they can get to the actual meat itself. In manifestational terms, you could say that this is the area you can't control. And this is the resistance you have to what you want placed on top of the manifestation. And the way it works in manifesting is that the bit that you can't control, so maybe that bit, is usually tiny in comparison to the fat that we're going to trim, the resistance. So when somebody says, how long will the manifestation take? You can actually give them an answer. Because yes, your broader self will guide you in different directions. And yes, there is no such thing as time, and time is shortening. And yes, you don't really know when a manifestation has occurred because it's your opinion. However, this trimming of the fat is so big that you can make a very good estimate of how long it will take to get to your manifestation, despite the fact that this is uncontrollable. And so what I'm going to teach you in this webinar is how to trim that fat. And make sure that the time that it takes for you to get to your manifestation is as small as it can be. It is an uncertain time, but it's tiny when being compared to that fat that we're trimming off. And that brings us to what this webinar is about. Believability theory. Now, before we jump into this, you've got to be aware of where you stand in relation to what you want. Because yes, you can use these ideas, but if you yourself are stopping the ultimate manifestation from happening because you're noticing absence, or because you don't trust the process, or you don't trust the direction from your inner being, then it doesn't matter if you trim the fat, because you're ultimately not going to get what you want. So being in a rush, even though we're in a webinar to do with timing, being in a rush is self-defeating. So you have to ask yourself, do you want this manifestation to come more quickly for enjoyable reasons, because it's more fun for it to come quickly, or because you're desperate for it to come quickly? One is presence-based, one is absence-based. And if you don't remember what presence and absence are about, please revisit that ultimate manifesting framework. The other thing about this being in a rush thing is that your broader self, that helicopter self, is never in a rush. When you go on a vacation to some tropical island, for example, are you really in a rush to get it over with and come home? Or are you there for the experience? Are you there for the fun of it? Well, from the perspective of our broader selves, our physical lives are a vacation. Our spiritual broader selves are in no rush to get that vacation over with. So you, from your physical perspective, might want your manifestation now, but you won't get much cooperation from your broader self. And that's again coming back to that idea that there is a part of that manifestation route that you're taking, the path that you're taking, that you will never really be able to control. But the rush bit is under your control. You can change your attitude. And then if you do change your attitude about why you want it to come more quickly, you can then start to apply this theory.